man for you. He brought me on board because I happen to be the criminal lawyer of the firm. But it bleeds into a lot of other areas, including what's called administrative law. So administrative law is any time a government makes a decision that you don't like, I step in and I appeal it, right? So I've done things from immigration, to dogs being confiscated, to driving instructors losing their DIAs, okay? And so that's why I assume, I suggested they have me, that the ADTAV invited me along just to talk a little bit about some of that kind of DIA stuff, okay? So this is what we're going to cover. I like talking about myself, so I'll give you a bit of a rundown about myself. We're going to have a look at Section 33 of the Road Safety Act. Does anyone know what that section is about?
Which one?
Section 33.
Driving instructor.
It's the whole section around you as a fit and proper person, okay? And how you actually have your DIA, how you keep it, how you try not to lose it, okay? All right. I'll have a chat about some of the recent cases that I've done that are relevant. We'll have a look at dash cams and privacy, just a quick chat about it, really, and what I think about it. I want to intervention orders. I'll explain to you why when we get there. Okay, and there's a few tax concerns I think that's important for the industry to get their head around currently. Just small things, just small changes that the Victorian government has implemented. All right. So, Will Billings, the driving instructor. I went through a small stint of trying to be a stand-up comedian. That was one of my first shows. It was called 2 Shades of Yellow. Because I'm half Chinese, and that's my nurse friend, and we were telling jokes about Asians in the medical field and Asians on the road. Plenty of good jokes there. So I started off, my very first qualification was my cert for driving instruction. I came home from overseas. My uncle, who had been a driving instructor for about 15 years, decided that he was going to go on holiday, and he handed me all these mobile phones. Because back then you had like Yes Time, Telstra, Free Time. And he wanted to be cheap about which students were calling him on what network. And he said, hey, look, I just need someone to look after my students and tell them to turn left and right. That's it. Okay. Now, unbeknownst to me at the time, you're meant to have a DIA. So I just went ahead and did it. Right? Now, when he got back, he says to me, look, Will, my students have said that you're actually a better instructor. I said, what? He goes, oh, I said you talk and you listen and you answer questions and stuff. And yeah, so maybe you should go do your Cert 4. So I signed up to Box Hill Institute. I met a lady called Margaret McLennan, which I'm sure many of you know. And she amazed me. And I said to myself, I want to be Margaret McLennan. Right? I never got long hair, but yeah, I've always died. Long story short, eventually I actually replaced her at Box Hill Institute as the driving instructor trainer at Box Hill. So me and Brian, we were running a course for quite some time. And through all of that, I became a consultant for Big Roads. I helped design the Road Smart program. I was one of the main trainers for the LTP program as well. We're all around the state teaching all the supervising drivers, mentors and things like that. Sadly, one of the best trainers of all, a guy called Matt Bennett from Charlton, who passed away. He was actually with me when he passed. So he came down to visit me and had a heart attack. And, yeah, it was a sad time. But there's a lot of people in this industry I know and I care about. And I could move on. I could choose to care less about the instructor industry, but since I've moved on, I really love this area. I really do. As a driving instructor, I found some very crazy inconsistencies, which I'm sure you've come across. For example, in the GLS test, running a stop sign is a critical error, yet it is a finable offence in the road law. Hitting a curb whilst turning is an immediate fail. I don't see where anywhere in the legislation you can be fined for hitting a curb, except for maybe maintaining a proper control of the vehicle, right? So there's a lot of these inconsistencies with the testing with the actual road law, right? Hitting the curve. I had a student on test, end of stage 1, front wheel hits the gutter as she's pulling in. Had this massive argument with the tester. She says, "Oh, that's a medium fail." So what for? She was like, "She hit the curve." So yeah, well, doing a parking maneuver. Oh, that's not a parking maneuver. What do you mean? I should pull over and park the car. He says, no, it's, no, parking maneuver refers to the reverse power of parking movement. I said, "Where's it say that?" She goes, "Oh, well, it says it in the documentation." "Really? This one?" And I pulled it out. I said, "Just point to me where it is." I was ready to go, right? As you can tell, I wasn't suited as a driving instructor. We've all got lawyer at the end of the day. But when I had this argument, and in the end, she was exasperated. I said, "Well, just carry on with the test. Finish stage 2. When we get back, if you were right, we'll concede. If you're wrong, you give him his license." Right? "No, I'm in charge here. I'm the authority in this car." Actually, I want to talk to you, manager, right? So as a manager, how do you get arguing with them? This is up in Waterloo. We head over to Burwood, right? I talked to the guy there back in the day. I think it was Ross Russo or something. I can't remember his name. And in the end, his response to me is, "I'm sorry, but this is not the way we train." I said, "So the law doesn't matter, even though it's written in plain English?" "Oh, no, it's not the way we train. You're going to have to write to the CEO." At that stage, my learner was a bit pissed with me. So he said, "Look, Will, I'll just pay for a new test." I said, "No." I said, "Roscoe, or whatever his name is, I can't remember." I said, "You deserve a test because you haven't understood the law here." And he eventually gave my student a free test and got retested that afternoon.
It's no longer a fail, you know that, right?
Well,
It's no longer a fail when they hit curve.
well, I don't know. Well, yeah, sure. Things may have changed.
Recently,
Yeah.
very recently.
And I think the thing is, this is why the ADTAV is so important in lobbying these things to make sure that they're correct, right? And why we need you as members to identify these inconsistencies and tell the ADTAV and say, "Hey, there's an inconsistency here, you need to take it to big roads, find out what's going on," right? I had a learner, by the skin of her teeth, go through the yellow light, and she was pulled over and failed. So what's that for? "Oh, well, she was supposed to stop." Now, this one was interesting. Had the argy-bargy, we went back to the testing station, and I said, "We want to talk to your manager," right? Manager comes out, this is down at Dandenong, I can't remember, a long time ago now, I can't remember her name, but she knew me personally, because I've been there so much, and complained. She says, "What happened?" I said, "This happened." And mind you, they were in the back for about 20 minutes before she came on the speed, right? And I said, "She ran a yellow." "Oh, well, my tester says that she ran a red." I said, "Well, that's very interesting because the two of us were sure it was yellow, and she said it was yellow, and now your tester's saying that it was red. What happened in that 20 minutes she was talking to you?" And she goes, "Oh, well, you know, blah, blah, blah." I said, "You're really lucky I did not record that conversation in the car." Her response, "Well, you can't record us." I said, "Why not?" She was, "Privacy." I said, "What privacy?" She goes, "Oh, the Privacy Act." I said, "Which one? The federal one, the Commonwealth one, or the state one?" And she just looked at me blankly. I said, "You have to realise that as a public servant, I have an absolute right to record any of you at any time, right?" Now, that raises some questions, I'm sure, for all of you about whether you can record during a test, right? But legislatively, you are allowed to record a public servant in the natural course of their work, right? Absolutely. Now, if they're aware of it and they don't put you on test, that's a different question, right? And that may open up further avenues of appealing those sort of things, those sort of decisions. Okay? Now, I'm not trying to get you too excited about rocking the boat too much, right? But I just want to get your mind around how messed up this industry is, right? And how messed up the whole legislative system is around driving instructors and young drivers. It's crazy. This is part of the reason why I became a lawyer, because I just kept seeing all these things. I wanted to do something about it, right? So anyway, I said to her, "Look, you've got bigger problems than me complaining. You've got a staff, employee, a public servant lying to you. What are you going to do about it?" Right? She said, said, I'll give you a free test. I said, sure, no problem. And finally, just for another quick laugh, I was driving through Burwood one day with Manuel. We're at red lights, police officer behind us, and he says, "There's a cop behind us." I said, "Yeah, and? Well, what should I do?" I said, "Well, nothing. Look, you got anything wrong?" "No." "Why are you nervous?" Well, they're flashing their lights now. What should I do?" Maybe we should pull over. So I pulled over, and the cop comes on. He looks at us. He's looking at his favourite word. Gets our license and he goes, "Mate, I don't know what to do here." I said, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Vehicles are registered." Right? He says, "But neither of you look like a Caroline." I said, "Oh, yeah, no, that's my wife. The car's registered." He goes, "Oh, yeah, I really don't know what to do." Now, I knew what he was supposed to do, but I wanted to find out, I wanted to allow him to make mistakes so I could appeal it later. Right? So he goes and talks to his sergeant on the phone. It took us ages. He finally says, "Look, we've made a decision. We're going to issue the fine in the name of your wife because it's her car, and I don't think it's fair to issue it to the learner, considering that they're in a driving lesson at the moment." And look, good luck with that conversation when you get home.
That happened to me. But the highway patrol actually gave it to the learner.
Because it is the actual learner's, correct. Correct. So
we did check that it didn't go on their, because that was a policeman before this. Did check that it didn't go on their record, and they were like, "Yep, that's fine." So we obviously paid the fine, but she did get it.
Yeah. So a lot of offences, pretty much the majority of offences when it comes to traffic are what are called operator onus offences. It's whoever's driving the car. Now that brings other issues again, because there is a section in the Road Safety Act that says that a supervising driver or a driving instructor can be considered as being in charge of the vehicle, depending on the situation. Okay? So we need to be very cautious about all that sort of stuff, about liability and all that sort of thing. I ended up forgetting that I had sent a check in the mail, and so I told them, and that fine suddenly disappeared. It never showed up again.
Will,
yeah.
Just on that, there was an incident at one of the testing centres a few weeks ago, and what happened was the learner driver was reversing back into the spot so that they could start the test. However, she wasn't in control. It was the instructor that was in control. So she was totally in control. What happened was they ran over an LTO. So,
well, we should
yeah, no, she's fine. She's okay.
Yeah.
So not once, eh? She's still she's got here. So not once but twice. Okay. Fortunately or unfortunately, my wife used to work with the child's mother, and she's totally distraught. She's not going to go anywhere near a car or anything like that, and she's been badly affected by it. But it was the driving instructor that was in charge of the car.
Correct. Yeah.
The other thing is that the girl told the driving instructor that she wasn't ready for the test. So what kind of ramifications are going to be on her now in regards to what's happened at that testing centre?
Well, nothing. She's not liable for it.
So she's not liable for it?
No, I mean, it's a fair defence, you know. Let's say she gets charged or she gets pulled in for, I don't know, some sort of civil claim. Well, her defence would be, well, I wasn't in charge of the vehicle.
It's under police investigation at the moment.
Yeah, well, she wasn't in charge of the vehicle. It's like a total defence. So, yeah.
Because I automatically thought that regardless of what happens, the supervising driver is responsible for the
Not
action.
necessarily, that's the thing. So the legislation is written in such a way that it's ambiguous, okay? But there's this, it's kind of implied that there's a joint, what's called in legal terms, a joint and several liability to who's controlling the vehicle at any one time. So generally speaking, it's whoever's behind the wheel. But if the facts come out that there was something else going on, so like a supervising driver egging on a learner to speed or something like that, then they're liable because they're in charge of the vehicle at that point for the purposes of that things. Yeah. So it's things like that. It all comes down to the facts. The devil's in the details. Yeah. But you can be liable. Yeah.
So is it the distinction between in control of the vehicle and in charge of the vehicle?
It's all interchangeable.
Right.
That's what's really annoying about that legislation and why it's so ambiguous.
Because it's not defined anywhere in the act.
No, not clearly enough.
Yeah.
And the idea is it allows the magistrate to look at the facts and make a decision.
So deliberately ambiguous.
In some ways, yes, because it wants to leave it open a little bit to allow a magistrate to make a decision, essentially. Yeah.
Based on the facts.
Yeah, based on facts. Right. Yeah. Okay, so this is me on the day I got admitted. That's the Supreme Court Library, and that's my lovely wife. And my dad, the criminal barrister, moved my admissions. He has been a huge influence on my life. He's an expert in road law, and he's the preeminent expert in Victoria for drink driving. He says it's his civil duty to put drugs back on the road, but there you go. I became a lawyer because my dad tricked me. I had a parking ticket, and I went to him and I said, what do I do about this? I got this penalty reminder notice and blah, blah, blah. I don't know who's driving the car. He says, well, your useless good no use to statement. Okay. I go to the magistrate's court in Broadmeadows, plead my case. Magistrate, judicial registrar says, never heard this area of law. It's new to me. I said, well, I can walk you through it. She says, I don't need you to tell me how to read the law. I thought, okay, so that's the responsibility of the lawyer. You're a lay person. Long story short, because I don't want to run out of time, we ended up appealing it up to the county court, and my dad represented me, and we won, and we got costs of about $9,000 from the local council. And as we were walking out, I said to Dad, I don't think that covers all my private school tuition, does it? He says, no, it doesn't, far from it. And I said, well, I know what I need to do. And he had that twinkle in his eye. He says, what do you need to do? I said, I need to go and commit some more crimes. But I signed up to law school the next day, and here we are. Okay. All right. So let's get into the more. Now you know a little bit about me. We've had a bit of laugh. Let's have a look at dive into Section 33 of the Road Safety Act. Okay. So the Section 33 of the Road Safety Act governs driving instructors and DIAs. Okay. There's when it comes to legislation, one of the things that you first learn as a law student is that there is the legislation and the principal act. Underneath that is the regulations. Underneath that is all the policies. And on the side is the case law that helps define all that stuff. Does that make sense? So case law is whenever a judge makes a decision on a matter, and generally it's to clarify what's written in the law. Does that kind of make sense? Now, the Act has to be passed by the Parliament, and it's set in stone until the Parliament changes it. Regulations are what are called delegated authority. What it means is that the government that is in charge at the time can change the regulations at any time that they deem necessary. Okay? So, for example, I'm also a wedding celebrant as well. Okay? There's the Marriage Act that says you must use the prescribed form to register a marriage, and you go, well, what's the prescribed form? Well, you go to the regulations. And the regulations change, particularly since the same-sex marriage was passed, right? Because the form had to change to allow for all that sort of stuff. But they didn't want it to go all the way back to Parliament and argue about what a form should look like. So they allow the government at the time to change those regulations at any time they need to. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah, cool, awesome. All right, so Section 33, like I said, set in stone. It's the principal act. We do have the regulations, and the regulator, being STB, has the right to change some of those policies and requirements at any time. So, when I left the industry to become a lawyer for a reasonable amount of time, Stan Gates, the previous president, and Rhonda asked me to come on board to assist with an issue that we were having in the industry, and that was to do with your requirements for education. So if you remember, you would have all got a letter, I got it too because I still had my DIA at the time, that said you had to update your qualification to the 22 or 20, I can't remember which one it was, right, in order to renew your DIA. Now, you may have heard rumours about what happened there, but I'll set the record straight for you, okay? I was in that meeting, I was the lead counsel for that meeting, okay? And what I did was I had a look at what was going on, why they were saying this, right? Because on face value, it doesn't make sense that an industry that is regulated is required to go and redo the whole basic course in order to continue your registration. That's like me having to go and do my whole law degree again, my whole 4 years, right, just to maintain being a lawyer. Doesn't make sense, right? And I argued this with STV. I said, look, if you're a plumber, right, you don't go and redo your whole plumbing apprenticeship every few years. You do what's called CPD, right? Continuous professional development. Lawyers, we're required to do 10 hours a year. Teachers, I think it's like 40. 20 is it? Okay. I think accountants are required to do something like 40 or 60 hours, right? Now, that would be a more suitable approach to ensuring that people are kept up to date in the industry. And that was my argument to them, right? And they said, oh, well, you know, I don't believe that. And blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, sure, no problems. I've got a Supreme Court writ ready to go. Let's have this fight, right? And she backed down very quickly, the executive of STV. And that's why you then got a letter that said, oh, ignore the previous letter about the qualification upgrade. That was something that the ADTAV and myself got involved in. That's what happened, okay? I also called them out for corruption, because I might as well, wasn't there, right? They were stating that they had done proper community outreach and inquiries. Now, I rang all of the RTOs, except for 1 or 2, that delivered the certificate for, including those that just get interstate in New South Wales and South Australia, to find out if STV had called any of them. And guess what they said?
No. No.
Don't believe everything you hear, right? You've got to find out for yourself, okay? And you get a qualified lawyer. Okay? Right, I really keep them right up the arse, right? Just to make sure that I knew what they were doing, okay? And so I said, okay, you say that you've spoken to the RTOs, right? Which ones? Right, in particular. Do you know how much money they stand to make out of this decision? Right? So that's me setting the record straight, okay? So if you have any questions about that, I was there, okay? Now, Section 33, the key part of that is something called the fit and proper persons test. How long have we got time? Just because I'll just get waffling otherwise.
No worries.
How long have we done for? Yeah. Okay. So the fit and proper persons test is a very, very well-known test. It's applied to a lot of professions. Okay? And the 3 key areas are honesty, knowledge, and ability. And they can pretty much be summarised like this. Honesty has got to do with the way that you operate. Can you be trusted to do what you're supposed to do? Will you follow the rules? Okay. Knowledge has got to do with, knowledge has got to do with your actual academics, if you are required to do that. So in this case, it can be Cert 4. Okay. And then your ability, you may not see it, but the case law says that it's got to do with your physical capacity. So that, as a driver, it's got to do with medical, and that sort of stuff. Okay. So those are the 3 general areas for fit and proper person. Okay. The only case really that's been reported by the Supreme Court is a case, I can't remember the year of it, I just remember the name because it just stuck in my brain. It's called the case of Windsor. You can look it up on Austley if you want to go and read it. I'll do you a brief summary from what I remember. It's a bloke called Cristobal Seguenza who used to teach out of Dandenong. I did a bit of research on him. Okay. He was accused of, and this is where I should probably give a trigger warning. I forgot to put that at the start. Yes, trigger warning to everyone, if you do need to leave, I do delve a little bit into criminality and sexual assault stuff, okay? So if it does make you uncomfortable, yeah, I just wanted to make that clear. Is that okay? Cool. All right, so Cristobal Seguenza was accused of sexually assaulting his 3 stepdaughters, okay? And he was criminally charged, but in the end, what happened was the stepdaughters retracted their statements, okay? And it all happened around the same time that his DIA was up for renewal. And so he was considered an unfit and improper person to hold the DIA. Now, he then went ahead and appealed that. And the taxi director at the time did a little bit of more sleuthing and found that he had actually also been charged in the previous period for Centrelink fraud. Okay, so he'd been claiming Centrelink benefits, although he wasn't entitled to them. And so they rejected him because on that, right? Now he appealed it because he's saying, oh, you know, they're focusing too much on his daughters and it was retracted and all that stuff and blah, 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 blah. In the end, the Supreme Court just quashed his appeal and said, look, sorry about the whole daughters thing, right? And that's your thing, that's got to do with police and all that sort of stuff. But ultimately, you are not an honest person, okay? Because you committed Centrelink fraud, right? You can't be trusted to keep the records that you're supposed to keep as a driving instructor. You can't be, we can't trust that you're going to follow the rules of registration and licensing and teaching and all that sort of stuff, right? So that was the reason why Seguenza then lost his DIA. Now, what's happened ever since, I don't know, but that's the case. And again, feel free to read it if you're bored one night and want to fall asleep. Right? You want to have a look at the case of Seguenza and the Secretary for Transport. Any questions so far? Or?
Just with that upgrade business.
Yeah.
Last time, and I think at the last meeting they said they had no intentions of going down that track. But now,
because I see it.
the course has been upgraded again
Yeah.
to 225.
Yeah.
So are they going to now go and say,
I'll be ready to put the
you've
boxing
got to be
gloves
all 225?
No, I'm ready to put the boxing gloves on. It's inappropriate. It's legally inappropriate. It's unfair.
Well,
Like, no one.
we'd already, with that last one, we'd already enrolled
Yeah.
and we upgraded ours,
Mm.
which we only had to do, like, it was recognition of prior learning,
Sure,
all
sure.
that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So we were happy to do that, but it did, it slugged us and everything, it was just after COVID, and
Should
whatever little nest
Yeah.
or backup finances we had, gone, and then you had to go and redo your DIA.
Seriously, you should
And
consider.
that was through the roof as well.
You should seriously consider suing STV if that's the case. No, I'm serious. You think I'm joking? You have a claim. It's a claim in what's called a stop, right? Am I right, George?
Yeah.
Right.
So far.
He's from the firm as well. He's come to keep an eye on me. Make sure I say the right things. But where a party has made a clear representation of what's required, if you've gone and acted on that, you have a right to make a claim. You may be able to sue STV for that. You may want to set up a meeting with us and have a chat. Seriously, right? Give us support.
How much
Yeah.
responsibility does the RTO have in all of that?
Nothing, because it was a voluntary contract. The person that made the representation, the people that made the representation was STV. And they were wrong for doing it.
STV was telling us that we had to
Yeah.
do pretty much the
Yeah,
whole
and
course again.
And it's in black and white.
And
If you
I
get
was,
that
and
there,
I was
yeah.
thinking the same as what you were saying, look, every other tradie doesn't have to redo
No.
their training all over again. And then, but Rudy had actually done some research and found someone in New South Wales which had an RTO, which had offices in Queensland, in WA, all over the place. And they said, no, we'll just get you to do this component of it to bring you up to date, which we sort of thought, well, that's going to get us to where we want to, and it's going to save us some money. But it still was a fair amount of money that we had to fork out, plus our time to do all of the coursework. And yikes!
You might want to claim it. Anyone that acted on that representation that you needed to upgrade, it may have a claim. It's worth having a chat afternoon for that reason, genuinely. Right? As much as I joke around, it's serious idea. Yeah. Okay, so there we go. These are some of the recent cases that I've worked on, so the training requirements I've already spoken about. I'm obviously using pseudonyms, okay, just to remind you of that. Okay. All right. Look, it's a very small industry. You're very likely to know who these individuals are. For the sake of legal privilege, please keep it to yourself if you do know, okay? But my client, we'll call him Tom Jones, received a show cause notice. And if you've never seen one before, it's worth having a look, okay? So I'll pass it around, you want to have a look. I've obviously redacted a few details there. Okay. Also to protect the complainants as well, okay? So they have a right to privacy as well, okay? Now, for those that do finally get to have a look at it, the main things I want you to look at are firstly the date that it was issued and the date that this DIA holder was required to give a response. It was on the 8th of August, and the response time was by the 16th of August. 8 days to respond to a show cause notice. Do you think that's reasonable? I don't. Okay. And I went to bat and I absolutely throttled them. I scared the living daylights out of them. Right? The other thing I'd like you to have a look at when you finally get a chance is two of the last couple of paragraphs on there. Okay? The decision maker has said something along the lines of being sexual conversation, or the conversation of sexual nature as a man in a car or a young woman or female is inappropriate and blah, 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 blah. What does that sound like the decision maker has already done? Made a decision without ever. That is called bias. That's called procedural unfairness, right? These are the people regulating, and I'm saying that with such an angry tone because I'm really pissed off about it, right? I'm really pissed off about it. Yeah. Now, very briefly, what happened was there was a young girl in the car with him. Had about 5 or so lessons. In the later lessons, and she was. And I had a party, blah, blah, blah. Oh, by the way, I lost my virginity at 14. Now, what are you supposed to do in that situation? Genuinely.
Can you focus on drive, please?
Perhaps, yeah. Right? But what are the rules? Where's the guidance? Where's the training? Right? What's STV doing? Right? And that was one of the key points that I pointed out. You don't have a code of conduct. You have no training. You have no CPD. Right? Driving instructors are left to their own devices to figure out how to deal with these issues. Right? And yet you want them to go and upskill? Come on. Really? Right? Now, long story short, what happened was, it was referred to police. Police said there's nothing here. The complainant was actually not the girl, it was the girl's mother. And the mother put in the complaint, and the mother ran this thing. The daughter said she wouldn't show up. She didn't want to give a statement, right? We ended up appealing it to the magistrate's court, right? Which is the proper venue for this. And all through it, we just kept telling STV's barrister, what are you doing? This is a hearsay case. She's not coming out, right? You're up for costs. We're gonna take her to the cleaners, right? You're wasting everyone's money. You're wasting all the DIA's registrations, right? Why are you doing this? But they just wouldn't let it go. And in the end, we won. We won because it was a hearsay case, right? And for what? Waste of time, waste of money, right? Now, the wonderful thing though, and we all have to thank Mr. Tom Jones, if you ever find out who it is, right? Because what then happened was I got another DIA holder, John Cash, And this was the day so we were already dealing with it concurrently at the same time as Tom Jones's one. And just after we had cross-examined and made a fool out of this STV delegate in the Magistrates Court, I suddenly get oh, we're going to withdraw Johnny Cash's. Right. I think they got a shock when they saw the letter and my name in the bottom of it because I don't know for them to fly if we push this one. Alright. So, very, yeah, this is why I think it's so important for you to try and get this message out to other DIA holders and just say, you have no idea how messy the industry's regulator is. You have no idea how incompetent they are. You have no idea how they don't understand their own rules. You need to come and join the ADTAV, boost our numbers, so we can properly advocate and have the money to do it, right? And the people power, right? That's really what ADTAV should be standing for. That's the kind of advocacy that the ADTAV should be doing. And then just finally, I was in court today for this one.
Excuse me, Will.
Yeah.
We're being asked by someone on the stream.
Yeah.
Maybe if you can hold the microphone further away.
Oh, okay,
So
sure.
we're getting echo.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, so I was just in court for this one actually. I was just adjourned it off. So I got to be careful what I say, but it's still an active case. But I had a gentleman approach me because I'm half Chinese. I speak Mandarin and Cantonese. And I had this Chinese national company that said, "Yeah, look, I got pulled over and the cops noticed. Well, asked me for my license, so I handed over my learner permit." And they asked me where my supervisor driver was and where my L plates are. And then they asked me to blow in a machine. They said that there was alcohol in the system. It took me to this cop shop to blow in another machine, and apparently I blew 0.119. Now, I was not aware of this until I actually had a quick look at it, but not having a supervising driver can have you sentenced to up to a 6-month imprisonment. That was new to me. I was like, oh wow, okay. I don't know, I haven't seen that before. So another little you might want to get out to your learners. Very important. You have a supervising driver because you could actually be looking at your time, right? Now, the interesting thing about this Chinese national though, and I don't want to say too much just in case the cops are listening, but we do have quite a good defence because he does have a full licence from overseas. And so once you have your learners, your overseas licence is still technically valid until you've done your first test. Then it gets taken off. That's how I understand it when I read it.
It says differently.
Well,
The minute the minute you get the card, you are now on a learner permit. Your overseas license is no longer valid.
well, look,
Not recognised
yeah.
in Victoria.
Many times it goes wrong. Okay, but I've read the legislation. And from what I can see.
Well, I'm not telling my students that.
No, don't tell them that.
I tell them not to, that they don't get the card if they're still within the 6 months, but after that 6 months,
Well, yeah.
they have to have the card,
Yeah.
and they can only be in the card with the supervisor.
Sure, but that whole 6 months thing, and this is again a criminal word talking, right? It's up to the police to prove how long you've been in the state.
No.
Exactly, right, that's the point, right? You had a question?
Same thing.
Yeah.
6 months or something.
Yeah. So once you've been a resident of Victoria for.
And surprisingly, I was at Big Rose, and there was one of their staff members running around the office trying to find out from one of the other management people. And this person was saying, but what if I go out of Australia and back in again? Does the 6 months start from then?
Technically, yes.
And no, it's from, if you read it correctly, it says your residential address.
Yes, you're changing it.
If you've got an Australian address in Australia and you've had that address for more than 6 months, technically you can go out and come back in, but you are living in Australia.
That's true, but you can change your residential.
But this woman was running around and she, from Big Roads, and she had no idea, and I went, I think they've got an address here, they live here.
When I used to teach road law during the Cert 4, I used to start my road law classes by saying, there's 5 aspects to law. There's what's written, what's intended, there's what's actually practical, there's there's what people do, and there's what the police will actually charge you for. And often those 5 things are completely separate from each other, right? Right. All right. So, recently, does anyone know about what happened with Bunnings? So,
No idea.
No, the cameras. They were getting people and then banning them from coming in if they'd been nicking things.
Bunnings has one of the worst loss prevention stats of all companies in Australia. People constantly go and steal things, and even worse, they bring them back and get refunds. Right? Happens all the time. So what Bunnings did was they set up cameras with AI technology that would scan faces and keep the data of facial recognition of anyone that went into Bunnings. So if any of you went into Bunnings in the last 3 or 4 years, you've probably been scanned. And there's a biometric data pool about you that Bunnings has. Right? Now, what happened, rightly or wrongly, is the Privacy Commissioner stepped in and said, can't do that. Can't get people's biometric details. It's a breach of privacy. Now, it's still somewhat of an active case because it was only handed down recently as a stop doing it, and Bunnings is considering whether they can appeal that. Okay? Because they have a legitimate reason, which is loss prevention. And there are a lot of fights that get started in Bunnings as well, would you imagine? A lot of assaults, right? Amongst staff, like from people attending the staff, even people between each other, fighting over this, right? And so that's why Bunnings put this in place. Now, I had a quick look at the privacy principles in the Privacy Act to get a bit of better understanding of how the Privacy Commissioner approached this. And one of the key parts of it is that the privacy principles more to do with large companies. So you as private practitioners of driving lessons don't meet that threshold. So having dash cams in your car is totally fine, okay? But just to cover your ass, okay, you're best off to have a sticker somewhere or a small sign, right, that just notifies that, hey, you're being recorded during this lesson. Okay? Steve, our illustrious secretary, is by far one of the best people to talk to about dash cams. He's got great footage. He uploads it all the time. I love watching it every once in a while when it goes past my Facebook feed. But he's definitely a man to have a chat to. Now, the best part of this is more marketing advice than legal advice now. Okay? You may keep a record of it for your own personal protection, such as in the case of Tom Jones and Johnny Cash. One of the things we didn't have was footage in the car that would have completely exonerated if it existed, right? So one of the ways you approach this from a marketing perspective is, we have a way of reviewing your learning and keeping a record of it, right, so that you can see your progress. Whereas in the back of your mind, you're like, I need to protect myself, right? Right? So I would thoroughly, I can't imagine being a driving instructor now without a dash cam, honestly. Right? But again, I'm speaking from a criminal lawyer's perspective.
Sorry, can you clarify that?
Yeah.
You're saying dash cam, you're saying forward and rear dash cams?
Internally as well.
With microphone, or you
Absolutely.
internal video?
Yeah, you want internal video and microphones, is my opinion.
All right.
Yeah.
Recently, first time ever, I was on my way to a client and I was driving down the road. I saw 2 individuals coming from a house. One was coming to the driver's side, the other one was going to the passenger. As I went past him, he puts his arm out and yelled an expletive, and I continued to drive. As I got to the end of the street, I looked in my rearview mirror, I saw he was following me. I pulled over outside my client's address, the client said to me later, she was worrying about what this individual was going to do, not just to me, but to herself as well. And he walked up to my window and knocked on the window, and he told me to put the window down. I said no. I was scared, but I was glad that I didn't lock the car, because I thought the next thing he probably would have done was smash the window. He then ripped the door open and then said, started saying, "You nearly ran me over." Well, clearly I didn't, because he had his arm out and he was facing me. But interesting, both my son and my daughter, when I told them about this, and I even turned to this gentleman and I said to him, "This is road rage." And he said, and yes, and interesting, my son said, "Mum, it's actually assault." So he said, no, it's not. And when he finished, he turned around and he did a U-turn and pretty much only went about 70 metres down the road and then parked on the side of the road. Well, clearly it was road rage, because you followed me all the way up to but he was denying it. And interesting though, my two kids said, "Mum, you should have had a dash cam. We really want you to get a dash cam inside your car."
Please do.
Unfortunately, this is the era that we're living in, and we kind of need it now.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't listen to what Vic Roads is telling us, that they don't want it in there, but we need it for our own protection.
Yeah, but what's the legislation if they're under 18? You're not supposed to film children.
There is no hard and fast rule about that, right? There are areas in law where you have what's called an implied expectation of privacy. Now, if you're in a driving instructor's car, you're semi-public, right? So there's really no, I suppose they can't turn around and say, "Oh, you can't film me." Well, wait a second, this is mostly a public space, right? So I wouldn't worry about it. I think having the camera is more important than not.
Think about taxis.
I had a very similar situation, but I had it a little bit different. What I did, he got out of his car and he approached us. And as he approached us, I put the window down and I said to him, I would go back into your car. This person in the car is under the age of 18. If you don't go back in your car, I will report you for child abuse. You will go on a register, and I said that to him. You will go on a register. You will go on a register, and it could affect your employment possibilities as well as your travel commitments. His face changed completely. He turned around and went back.
Pretty much when I said this is road rage, he kind of said, his response was, it's shaken me. I kind of didn't realise my student was on the other side of the road watching this all play out. But when she got in the car, I'm now trying to console her and say, "Are you okay?" I'm already still shaking from the experience. But it's tragically what we're having to deal with. But he kind of did back off. He still had to give me his 2 cents worth.
Remind them that you're in charge of a minor and there could be a lot of trouble.
Well, at that moment, I was still in the driver's seat. So he's just come up, and then his parting words were, "You shouldn't be a driving instructor."
Of course.
And I
You
just,
should be allowed
I opened the door again and I said, "Would you like to have my job?"
And then again, we had to cancel, or we had to switch off one of the tests and stuff, internal camera or outside camera. What's the legal standing on that for the visual test?
Yeah, again, there's no, Vic Roads test are technically as a public servant. You have rights.
Even with the joint venture?
Sorry?
Even with the joint venture?
I'd have to clarify that for you. Yeah. But generally speaking, even if you are a privately employed through an agency or something for a government department, you fall under governance rules. So you're still a public servant technically. Yeah.
And they're saying that they don't have cameras anywhere in their building? Exactly.
But this
Walk
is the
in
thing.
there, Big Broken, and says, you can't take photos or anything, but you've got all these other cameras in the building.
Well,
Filming you.
sure, look, I get it, and that's
Start.
that's all the double standards you need to start. You know, just opening your mind about it. Now, you don't have to make a huge hoo-ha out of it like I do. It's just that that's my job, right? I go in and punch heads, right, verbally, right, or in written format. But yeah, but it's just making yourself aware of these things, right? So that, yeah.
If you have them, your dash cams facing out and no sound on, presumably that's possible. That was it. How do they,
Yeah,
so
that's
how
it.
do they argue with that? Because you're not recording them, you're just recording outside the car,
Yeah.
not recording sound.
Yeah.
It's not going to help you when you have road rage or something happening inside the car. You need to have that thing filmed.
Yeah.
And my son is quite adamant, Mum, we need to get some dash cams.
I'm going to Jenny had a question. Yeah.
And of course, Christine, you would have it that way while you're just doing your own lessons.
Yeah.
The other example was when you're doing the actual.
Yeah, the actual test. Yeah.
I'll leave the legal part for Will, obviously. But, you know, for business, good practice, you would have it in your terms and conditions that you do have video footage, video dash cam happening during tests. And as Will said, have a sticker or something.
Yeah, it's fine. This says, oh, you know, you've been filmed.
And a lot of you have to sign off with terms and conditions. Do you do that for your first lesson? That sort of thing. So they've read it, they understand, and they sign it.
Do you ever get a physical signature, or can you just say it's on the website?
You need to make sure they've seen it as much as you can. No, you don't have to sign it.
But no one reads it.
But that's up to them.
Right, that's what I'm saying, besides something.
There's a whole other area of forum, standards and contracts, and contract law. Standard form contract. All right, let's keep moving forward because I don't want to spend too much time on too many things. We're almost done. Just got two more, one really slide to go through. So I just wanted to finish off with just some small areas that may be of concern. They're not really, but it's worth talking about. Intervention orders are becoming the absolute flavour of every month. I am so inundated with IVO matters, in and out of the magistrates court, day in, day out, dealing with them. Now, why this came up in mind for me in preparation for sharing with you today was that intervention orders are one of the few areas of law that have proximity restrictions. Okay, so if you find yourself the respondent to an IVO, which is very common and likely now because they hand them out like candy. Okay, someone just has to be upset with you, they can make an application, and straight away they're given an interim intervention order without you ever having to say anything or be able to defend yourself. They just give it out, right? They give it out on the counter offer. Okay. Once you've been served with an IVO, particularly an interim one, there's usually a standard proximity rule of 200 metres from any location that the person lives, works, or studies, right? And a 5 metre exclusion rule from them personally, okay? You need to be very aware of this sort of stuff as driving instructors, because if you've got particular routes that you like driving and teaching around, you don't want to inadvertently breach an IVO, okay? I just say that as a warning because I just know that's at least one or two of you at some point in the next 24 months, I can almost guarantee it, will be subject to an IVO.
If they're in a car that is going in the opposite direction with another instructor.
That's inadvertent, it's not.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
But if you're a driving instructor and you've got signage, right, and you know you shouldn't be in that street, and you go into that street and they see that you're in that street, you're in criminal breach with an IVO. And then you're facing a criminal charge from them. Right? So I just want to, just as a side warning, right? It's just, because I do so many of these, I just went, I've got a feeling that this may be of relevance to driving instructors that find themselves the unavoidable, right, respondent to an IVO, just because someone has it in for you. And it could even be a student.
Does that mean we should be making inquiries of our students? Do you have an ADO against you?
No, you have to be served with it personally. You will know about it.
No, I mean,
The students, yeah.
You're telling them where to go,
Yeah.
and they might have an
What if
ADO.
they have got it on them?
Okay, so, they should know, it's their responsibility to tell you. I wouldn't bother asking them because you're not in the wrong, right? So, and it's a touchy subject. I think from a marketing and business point of view, you probably don't want to be asking and delving too deeply into those kinds of questions, right? It's more for them to be like, hey,
Yeah, but they don't know where you're going to be taking them on their lesson either.
no,
And
but
you happen to go down the same street that they're not meant to be going down.
sure.
How are they supposed to know that's where they were going to go?
Mind you, how would the protected person know if they're just,
That's right.
like they're just in the car, learning car driving class, they wouldn't really know in practicality. But if you're concerned about these things for your learners, it's a very simple question. Is there anywhere that you don't want to go? Is there anywhere that you need to avoid whilst you're in the car? That's not a harmful question to ask, right? Yeah.
Why are you asking?
And I just expand that one to divorced couples.
Yes.
I've got a couple of kids of the father, but I have no idea if the mother's allowing this to happen.
Look, again, it's one of those roles.
Or vice versa.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I don't think you would ever be subject to this, but if it became an issue, technically the parents can provide their child parenting orders to you to consider or let you know about it, right? So parenting orders have very strict rules about who are allowed to see them. Very strict rules. You as an educational individual may fall within the type of person that's allowed to view it, right? So, but I doubt it would really become an issue, really. But fair point, right? But it's 0.0001% of situations.
I only hear from one side, so I have not seen the other side.
And you have an implied duty to just believe that.
Yeah.
There's no need to go. You're not an investigator.
Ignorance is bliss.
Correct. Yeah.
I've got both addresses. So.
Yeah.
When there's an issue, your radar normally
Yeah. Alrighty, and finally, just some new tax concerns that have come up. The state government in their state Labor government in all their wisdom have flagged that they may be looking at charging land tax on your principal place of residence should you be claiming any business expenses on it. So, yes, they've lowered the threshold, and it's not something you can really hide from either, because what they've said is they're going to start using what's called data matching, which is just their version of AI, right? To have a look at where you're spending your money, what's going on, what's happening at your home, right? So it may be a time to start considering having a chat to your accountant or your tax lawyer, right? And say, hey, can I maybe have my business registered at your address, right? Because ASIC has your registered address, where your principal place of business is, and if it's your principal place of residence, you're potentially risking a land tax bill, which is ridiculous, right? So they're looking at doing that now, and they've just lowered.
Can we have a PO box address?
Yeah, sure. If I didn't double check that, but if you can get away with it, I don't think so, because you need to have a physical service address. So if anyone wants to sue you, they need to be able to come and physically serve you. So a PO box probably doesn't fly. But you can use your accountant's place. You can use your lawyer's address. You can use a virtual office, right? One of the spaces I'm looking at potentially renting for my own law firm is $300 a month, right? It's a virtual office. So, but I can make use of that address, right? But plus as a criminal lawyer, I don't want people to know where I live, right? So you need to start having these conversations with your accountant, right, about all that. Also, if you have claimed any business expenses on your principal place of residence, even a percentage, that may affect your capital gains tax if and when you decide to sell your principal place of residence.
So I have a question on that.
Yeah.
Would that apply if you're just claiming utility, like, not utilities, utilities,
Even then.
power and.
Even then. So my accountant, who I'm happy to recommend, he's a great guy, right? He's based in Notting Hill, not the movie, the suburb, and he's very, very good at all this sort of stuff. And his advice is always, don't claim anything on your principal place of residence here in Victoria. It's just too risky. I know it's tempting because it'll, bring your taxable income down and all that sort of stuff. You're better off doing that through some other address.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it will affect your finances in the future. Yeah.
Definitely check with your accountants,
Yeah.
because there are different ways of
There are. Yeah.
managing it.
Yeah. So I'm not giving financial advice, I'm just giving general legal advice, okay? I'm not an accountant. So you do need to go and check this with your accountant specifically on these points, but they are new things that have just popped up recently, so you really, really need to go and get your hand around it. Okay?
So if you're not claiming anything though, not claiming anything, and you've just got your house as
Even then, go talk to
your
your
registered.
Talk to your accountant.
So, sorry to bother you on this one. Capital gains is federal tax, not Victorian.
Yeah, but still, because the ATO will start looking at what you've bought, what you've sold, where you've got your business registered, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, AI is getting out of control now. They're robo-debt, all that sort of stuff. They're going to be pinging you wherever they can. So again, go and talk to your accountant. That's as much as I can talk about on the subject, because I'm not a tax lawyer, but it's just for you to be aware that there are changes occurring.
And that's Australia-wide, not just Victoria.
Well, Victoria's got to do with the SRO and the land tax, right?
Yeah.
But your capital gains stuff, for if you're planning to sell the principal place of residence later, that's stuff that you need to deal with the ATO and all that sort of stuff. So you need to talk to your accountant about it. Yeah. Have a serious conversation about it. Okay. And then finally, of course, the whole cash issue. Well, I think that's probably not so much an issue these days. No one really pays cash anymore, but
They are, but we're not going cashless, I hope.
it's.
Yeah.
I'm obligated to say, whilst I'm on record,
I'll
right,
turn the camera.
that any cash that you take needs to be declared, right? I'm obligated to say that. Right? Otherwise, there are stiff penalties for getting caught dealing with cash or not declaring. Okay? That's all I'm going to say now. Alrighty, so, sorry, where are we going? So just finishing up. So just quick summary. Hopefully you can just peel the curtains away a little bit through my eyes and seen that there are some serious issues with this industry. There's some serious issues with how you're being regulated, the way that the government is dealing with the industry, right? You as business people, as well as young driver trainers, right? There's some serious issues that need to be considered, that need to be lobbied, right, by the ADTAV. Really, they're the only body that's going to do anything about it, right? Really, right? You need to really start thinking about how you interact with your learners, how you protect yourself, right, and maintain your fit and proper person status. Okay, very, very important. Which leads into the idea of having dash cams, having evidence, keeping these things up to date, and then some of the issues around proximities and IVOs, right, and then some of those tax implications that are coming in. Okay, yeah. So again, the ADTAV, where I say we, although I'm not really a member, I'm just an external counsel now, but I was on the council a long time ago, but I didn't do anything because I didn't know anything. But yeah, really we need to try and build a membership here. We need to have that financial and size capacity of people that will force the government to actually do something to fix a few of these issues that we all said, right? And very importantly, there's no code of conduct for this industry from the regulator. There's no guidance on what you're supposed to be upskilling yourself on, right, and keeping yourself updated. What the hell is, last meeting, a friend of mine in front of us is a very valid question. You know, bus drivers pay something like, what is it, like $50 a year for their register. There you go, even less, right? We're paying, you know, on average 200 something per year, right?
Oh, yeah.
Per year, right? And what do we get for it? What services are we getting from the regulator? What's the regulator doing for us? Nothing.
Not even providing a code of conduct.
No, and all they're doing is sending out show cause notices that don't allow you an opportunity to respond to false
They're
allegations.
also not releasing the shonky driving instructors either. They're supposed to be checking up on those people and they're doing nothing.
There you go. Right.
And there are shonky ones.
I found a little loophole the other day. We'll finish on this now. There's just a little loophole. I was just reading before coming in. The offence for teaching a learner teaching anyone to drive for a fee, the offence is a maximum of about $1,600 fine. Okay. There have been a few that I personally haven't been involved in, but I've seen actually in the magistrate's court. At most, they would get fined about $450, right? But then there's a small loophole where if the person has a full license, you can actually technically teach them about the IA.
But get money,
For money.
payment for it.
Yeah, I was reading, I was like, this can't be right. I read it 3 or 4 times,
So
like,
the government's got it wrong already.
So it does say there that it's an offence to teach someone for gain, right? But then there's an added section, it is a defence to this offence if the person being taught has a full or relevant licence. So in that situation, someone's got a learner permit, right? But they've got an overseas licence that can trump it within that first 6 months. Technically, anyone can teach them for a fee. That's what I can see. And I go, right, okay. Government's got it wrong again. So, anyway.
It's in there so that for the trucking industry.
Potentially there's other reasons, but that's what I saw. Yeah. So there's always other reasons that I may not have considered. I can't be completely abroad all things, but yeah, that'll be, yeah, there you go. All right. Feel free to throw questions at me.
John, do you want to just have questions?
Yes, questions for Will at the moment.
Yeah, sure. Go for it. Yeah.
Just a quick one on terms and conditions. So
Yeah.
some driving instructors have terms and conditions, which they get their students to sign.
Yep.
If you've got a minor under the age of 18 and they sign it, does it carry much weight?
Okay. So the old capacity from contract construction. I'm not a contract lawyer, but I did study in law school. So there are 3 concepts when it comes to contract law with that area. It's called capacity, right? So a contract is either enforceable, void, or voidable, depending on what's in there, right? Between the ages of, anyone under the age of 18, a contract can be voidable, okay? So it gets really technical, the argument, right? But essentially what it means is that anyone under the age of 18 can enter into a contract, right? Totally fine. Right, because we can't exclude the young people from getting involved in society, right? That's the reason behind it. However, because of their immaturity, and this is very, very old case law, because of their immaturity, they can be protected from unscrupulous adults that may take advantage of them. Okay, so the first point when it comes to a contract with someone with a minor is that they can walk away from the contract without any penalty. Right? That's what voidable means, that they can just walk away from it. Right? Now, having said that, though, the contract then becomes enforceable again if it falls within the categories of what are called necessaries. So necessaries are things that are like education, work, food, anything like that. Right? Now, I hope that kind of answers your question. Well, it's probably raising more questions than anything, right? But the general answer is it's enforceable. It is enforceable for the purpose of kicking them out of the car if they're not following the terms and conditions. Does that answer your question? But if they're on a payment plan, right, and they owe you money, they can walk away with it. That's the answer.
So regarding the contract, is it a tick is okay or you need a physical signature?
Look, if there's weak ink on the paper, it's technically a signature. My younger brother, who's now like 28, right? I don't know why, but his signature's a smiley face. I'm not joking. I just laugh every time I see it. I just want to sat there for him last week, and I said, okay, sign him, and I saw the smile face.
But it doesn't matter, right?
No, it doesn't matter.
That's
It's a
his
signature.
signature.
Yeah, signature is a signature.
Yeah, I've got on our sheet, I just say to them, look, I've got your private information.
Yeah.
Your name, your address, your date of birth, your license number.
Mm.
I have to, by law, make sure that I keep that secure.
Yeah.
That no one else gets to see it, but also by law, I can only hold on to it for 2 years after you get your license.
Beautiful.
And then there's another line that says that the student will incur any infringements. And I just say to them, now that does sound scary apparently, but I have got a brake and an accelerator and I can reach over and grab the steering wheel. So, but once you've got your license, they won't be sending Christine the bill, will they? And they laugh usually. And I say, look, I just want a signature there that you understand. I have to be careful with your information. You have to be careful with your driving in as much as you can be. So I'm not really saying this is law and you're signing a contract. I'm just saying this is like just an agreement that we're sort of coming to.
Yeah, look, I think in this industry, you can kind of get away with just putting your terms and conditions on the website, because the contract is not a contract because it's signed. A contract's a contract because there's an implied agreement, right? It doesn't have to be physically signed. In some instances, like land transfers or like engaging lawyers and stuff like that, you have to have signature. It can be digital, right? So you can use a digital signing platform of some sort. Adobe, DocuSign, there's one called Foxen or something like that. You can use any of those. But in your industry, I think it's fine to state the terms and conditions up on the website and just say, look, there's terms and conditions on the website. You really need to check it. The main ones are this, this, and this. If you give them a quick verbal overview of the main points, right, the contract's there.
So if you don't have it on your website, but you give it to them and verbally explain it.
You don't have to sign a contract.
Yeah.
It's just that extra step that's sort of.
The only thing that the signature does is confirm that you.
That's it, right? But
you can forget it.
But there's many cases where you can sue someone and they go, oh, we didn't sign a contract. You go, well,
In fact, you did.
yeah, you go, well, no, you didn't sign a contract, but you entered into a contract with me. Right? And clearly, because I gave you a product and you gave me money, that's a contract. So, yeah. Or I gave you a service and you paid me for it, that's a contract.
One more question. If a student was travelling, say, 70 in a 60 zone, the police pulls over, can the driving instructor be held liable?
Can be. Depends on the circumstances. Yeah, going back to the start, there's that joint and several liability. So in that instance, if I was the copper, I'd just give the fine to the learner. Right? But if the learner goes, oh, but he was pushing the pedal, and no, you might find yourself with a fine as well. And both of you would have a fine, speedy fine.
But if it's over 45, then that's a separate infringement.
Yeah, that's excessive speed. We're looking at big numbers there at that point. Yeah.
We're in trouble.
Yeah. So if you allow a learner to get to an excessive speed, then it's like automatic. You're at fault. You're not having anything.
Supervising.
Yeah. And there's other stopping with popping neutral on the handbrake. Within reason, right? You don't want to slam the handbrake whilst you're doing 100 k's an hour. But yeah.
Oh, you've got it.
Any other questions?
One final question.
You said one more.
One role. If I'm a sole trader,
Yeah.
I've got an excess of work, another driving instructor who wants to do some work for me.
Yeah.
If they're doing work for me and they're paying me a commission,
Yes.
do I have to pay them superannuation?
That's really more a question for the accountant but the legal answer is that there's a threshold. From memory, it's like 75%. So if someone's subcontracting to you that earns more than 75% of their income from one source, then you are liable for their superannuation.
Yeah, there's all sorts of, yeah, you need to talk to your accountant.
You need to talk to your accountant. That's only one answer. There's other loopholes and things, yeah.
And yeah, it's around, you know, if you're dictating what they wear, what hours they work, all these sorts of things determines whether they're an employee rather than a contractor. And yeah, there's all sorts of,
Yeah, it had to do with the whole word choices thing. So John Howard brought in word choices. Everyone got sacked overnight, brought back as subcontractors, didn't have to pay super. Then Kevin Rudd came in, Kevin 07, and yeah, they readjusted the tax code and said, well, no, wait a second, you need to be paying super. So set a threshold for it. But that's the history of it. But it's, again, I'm not a tax lawyer, so you really got to go talk to your accountant. Yeah, but that's the rough answer, yeah.
Next speaker needs to be an accountant.
Right, got that?
Cool. Any questions from online or anything like that? Or?
No.
No? Okay, cool.
Just a statement about your ABO that one of our clients was informed by his student that there was an area that he couldn't go through when you mentioned that.
Told you. Told you. So I thought, oh no, there's no point bringing up IVOs in this forum. No, actually, I think it's important. I think it's actually relevant.
We do have a question.
Yeah.
Someone said, can we talk about consent for a minor under 18 picking up and dropping off at their home address? Oh, it just says at home address, so I assume it means at their home address. Are there any issues around picking up and dropping off minors from their home address?
No.
Do we need consent?
Well, even then you can. Look, I say this because it's the law, not because it's morally correct or anything, but the age of consent in Victoria is 16. All right? And this was one of the key points that I raised in the matter with Tom Jones, right? Yes, she was talking about sexually related stuff in the car and all sorts of stuff, but she's over the age of consent, right? What STV were trying to do was trying to, even though the police had already set the matter aside, they were using words like sexual abuse, right? Which is a very, very specific terminology in law that a government department should not be using because it falls within the criminal code, right? And he was not deemed as someone that had committed sexual assault. And one of the key reasons is because she was over the age of consent. You know, the courts are extremely cautious about governing people's speech, right? And so when you're over the age of 16, it's just this funny area where we're working with children the child safe mom. They say, oh, well, you're talking about that stuff, it's grooming. Well, wait a second, it doesn't meet the criminal threshold. There is an age of consent, right? Now, I'm not saying I'm going to go out and start dating 16-year-olds, but it's just, that's the law, right? That's the threshold. So coming back to your question, I'm kind of going off the rails, right? But there's no requirement for consent in that situation, you know. But the thing you would be concerned about is how it looks, the visuals of it. That's the issues that we have currently in that space. As soon as, particularly if you're male, right? I'll say it, right? Particularly if you're male and you're seen as potentially, right, grooming a younger female, you instantly set up as a pariah, right? And you're guilty until innocent. And I'm doing these over and over and over again in multiple industries, right? The swimming industry, my gosh, I've had like 10 in the last 3 months, right? In the swimming instructor industry, it's rife with false allegations, right? And you can see why, because everyone's half naked. It's just part and parcel of the industry. Right? I hope that answers that question.
I think it is.
Yeah, you just got to be worried about the visuals, and then that again comes back to the dash cam stuff. You need evidence. You need to protect yourself.
But you've got to be careful then where you're storing that.
Yeah, absolutely. But the privacy principles don't apply to you as
Yeah, but the thing is, you've got hackers and everything, so you've still got to make sure
Yeah,
that you're
that's true.
storing somewhere.
Talk to Steve,
that
he knows what to do.
nobody can get access to that same footage
Yeah.
that you might need one day.
Yeah. Cool.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope that really was helpful and you felt like you got a lot out of it. I really wish there was more people just because I like an audience. I tell you, I like laughter. Thanks so much.
Thank you all for coming tonight. I'm glad you got what you're looking for out of that.
I have a general question. Is there a special club to get Saturday bookings?
Yeah.
I cannot get them done. They're happening all the time in July, but there's no notification or anything when they're working on
In
how to
Geelong, they used to tell us, when they had, but after COVID, they had changes of staff and everything. And now all of a sudden you go